to Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Weldin. Today's story is called Anansi and the Sky God's Stories, an adaptation of a West African fable co-written for you by Daniel Hinds and our friend Melly from Stoopkid Stories. You might remember Melly from when she teamed up with us on The New Kid, and now she's back to perform this episode for all of us. Hooray! Thanks! Enjoy the episode!
Anansi and the Sky God's Stories. Once upon a time, humans had no stories. They shared nothing over the fire but food, and went to bed to the songs of bugs outside their homes. It was a boring life, and the humans walked the earth bored and sad, with very little to brighten their lives. There was silence more often than laughter, and the world was darker for it. Anansi watched all of this with a heavy heart. He was the god of knowledge throughout all of Africa, and he knew that humans needed stories to brighten their lives. Far above, Anansi knew there lived Nyami, the sky god. Nyami was said to know all of the stories that had ever been or would ever be told, and he kept them all in his palace far above the earth. Luckily, Anansi was also a spider god, and was able to shift himself from a man to a spider as easy as blinking. He transformed and then cast a web into the wind. It flew up and connected to the sky god's palace, and Anansi scampered up. "Nyami!" he called. "The humans need stories! Please, let me share them with the world! I can pay you!" "Pay me?" The sky god laughed from his giant throne. "The stories are priceless. I've already been offered entire kingdoms for just a handful of my tales. What makes you think I'd share them all with you?" Anansi thought about trying to steal the stories, but the sky god had them locked up tight in a magic box that was forever on his lap. So even as a tricky spider, he had no hope. "I'll pay any price," he said. "The humans need stories, and I can't let you just hoard them forever." "Let me," the sky god scoffed. "I am the sky god, and I do as I please. But since it is so important to you," Nyami smiled a mischievous smile. "Very well. I have a price, though I doubt you can pay it." "Anything," said Anansi. "Simple then. I want you to bring me the angriest swarm of hornets that buzz like thunder. I want the deadliest leopard with teeth like flashing spears. I want the longest python who can swallow a goat whole. And finally, I want a fairy, one of the angry ones that humans are never able to see." The sky god said all of this with laughter on his lips because he figured he was asking for the impossible. He thought Anansi would give up his quest right there and then, but the spider god only smiled. "A fair price," he said. "I'll be back shortly." "We'll see," said Nyami. "We'll see." Anansi slid back down his spiderweb to the wilds of Africa and thought about the price he had to pay. It would be difficult, but Anansi wasn't just a spider god. He was also a trickster god, and he was more clever than most. Plus, he had help. His wife was Aso, and many said that she was even smarter than Anansi. He talked to her about the sky god's price, and together, they made a plan to capture each of the creatures. They decided the swarm of the hornets would be the simplest, and that's where they would start. They found the nest, buzzing loud as thunder, and watched the hornets come and go. Each one had a stinger the size of a needle, and those they stung said it felt like red-hot fire in their veins. "Careful now, husband," Aso said, passing Anansi a dried gourd full of water. Anansi took the gourd and poured some over his head, and then poured the rest into Aso's hands. "Hornets! Hornets!" he cried. "The rain is coming! It nearly washed me away!" As he shouted this, Aso hid behind a tree and flickered water from her hands over the hornet's nest, making it seem like rain. "Quick," Anansi said to the hornets, "hide in this gourd I have. I'll keep you safe from the rain." The hornets hated the rain, especially when the drops were bigger than they were, and they quickly flew to the gourd. As soon as they were all inside, Anansi put a cork in the opening and sealed them in. "It worked!" Aso cheered. "One down, 3 to go," Anansi said. Next, they went to capture the python so big he could swallow a goat. Aso had met the snake and knew he was very vain, so they decided to use that against her. They wandered into the part of the forest where she lived, arguing loudly. "There's no way a python could be so long," Anansi said dramatically. "I think you're a liar." "No, husband, it's true," Aso replied. "There is a python here, basically a queen. She is longer than any other creature." "Bah! Lies! I doubt any python could be so big." The python heard this, and just like they planned, couldn't help but interrupt. "I am that big," she said, hanging down from a tree. "I am the longest snake in all the world." "I don't see it," Anansi said, even though she was obviously the most massive snake who had ever slithered. "Maybe I could measure you." "Yes," said the snake. "Measure me and tell everyone how I'm the biggest." "Okay," said Aso, "but it's hard when you're all coiled up. We need you to lay along this tree branch as straight as you can." The snake moved to comply, but she couldn't get her long body perfectly straight. "I'll just tie your head down, and then you can stretch, and I'll tie your tail so you'll be nice and straight," Anansi said. "Is that okay?" "Yes, yes," said the snake. "See that I'm the longest there is." She stretched out, and Anansi tied her head, and Aso tied her tail, and then they wound her all in between with vines until she was all wrapped up. The python was caught. They broke the branch off the tree and put it with the gourd full of wasp. "That's 2 down," Aso said. "A good start," Anansi agreed. "The leopard next, then?" "Carefully," Aso said. "This is the most dangerous part." They went out to the plains where the great leopard prowled. He was colossal, and even the regal lion stayed far away from his hunting grounds. There would be no reasoning with the leopard, and he wouldn't be tricked by fake rain or his vanity. He was a hunter, and the only way to catch him would be to hunt him first. Anansi and Aso made their preparations and then set their trap. They left Anansi alone in the plains, eating a large meal by a fire. The smells of roasting meat wafted through the air, and soon the leopard caught the scent. Aso watched as he prowled through the plains, getting ever closer to Anansi. "This better work," she whispered to herself, "or I'm gonna need a new husband." The leopard prowled behind Anansi, her mighty teeth flashing like spears. He was a lethal hunter through and through, and he always attacked from the back. He crept closer and hunkered low, getting ready to pounce, just like they planned. The second before the leopard could leap, he let out a howling, yowling cry. Anansi and Aso had dug a deep hole and covered it with grass and sticks so it looked like the ground. The leopard had stepped onto it and fallen through, dropping deep into the hole and landed on a thick spiderweb that Anansi had woven. "What is this?" he growled. "Let me go! I'll eat you up! I'll pounce you into next week! The more he struggled, the more tangled in the webs he became, until they had even his mighty mouth stuck shut. 3 down, Anansi said, pulling the leopard from the hole and putting him with the hornets and the snake. "And the hardest one left to go," Aso said. "No adult has ever seen a fairy, and now we have to catch one." You made a clever plan, Anansi said. We just have to trust that it will work. I hope it will. It will. We will get the stories for the people, and they'll finally have something fun to do besides poking at their fires. They set out to catch the fairy. This was the hardest challenge because the fairy could become invisible, and they only ever appeared to children. Aso had heard, though, the fairies loved a good sweet yam, so they made a dish of mashed yams with butter and sugar. They also made a doll out of cloth, all stuffed with leaves, and put the yams in the doll's lap, like she was a kid having a snack in the forest. They waited and watched from the trees. And sure enough, a fairy eventually appeared. She was small and shiny, with glowing wings and smooth yucca-like skin. "Hello, child," the fairy said. "It looks like you're enjoying some yams there. Do you think I could have a bite?" The doll sat there silently. "Didn't you hear me?" the fairy demanded. "I said, give me some yams!" Of course, the doll didn't move. "What, do you have wax in your ears? Are you mean or just rude? I'm a fairy, you're a kid, I ask for yams and you share them. This is how it works, you dolt." Anansi and Aso smiled. They had heard fairies had terrible tempers when refused, and so far, it seemed to be true. "Give me some yams!" the fairy shouted. When the doll didn't respond, the fairy flew forward and pushed the doll with all its might. Of course, Anansi had covered the doll in a sticky sap, so when the fairy touched it, she was as good as glued. "Ah! What is this? I can't get free! What in the world? Who did this? I'll push you into a lion's den! I'll feed you to the pythons! Show yourself! Oh! Hi, Anansi! Hi, Aso!" "Hello, fairy," Aso said. "Sorry to trick you, but it's for a good cause." "It better be," the fairy said. "That's all of them," Anansi said. "I'm going to take them back to the sky god now." "Good luck, husband," Aso said, and then gave him a kiss. Anansi used his spiderweb to wrap up the hornets, and the python, and the leopard, and the fairy, and then dragged them all back up the web to the sky god's Naomi's palace. "Ho, Anansi!" the god called when he saw the spider peek over the edge. "Have you come to give up?" "Not at all," Anansi said, throwing the web-wrapped bundle at Naomi's feet. "I've come to claim my prize." The sky god looked stunned. His mouth hung open, and he rubbed his eyes like he couldn't believe what he saw. For a moment, Anansi thought that he would rage and try to go back on the bet. But after a moment, the sky god started to laugh on his throne. "Well done, trickster," he said, slapping his knee. "I should have known better than to enter into a bet with the spider god. Truly, your reputation has proven true." He picked up the box from his lap and handed it to Anansi. "Yours as well," Anansi said with a smile. "Take the stories and share them with the humans. Let them learn and laugh. Let them be excited and afraid. Let them taste all that life has to offer and see if they can grow." "Thank you for your stories," Anansi said. "You've earned them," Naomi said. "And from now on, they are your stories. Share them as you will." Anansi thanked the sky god again, and then spread the stories, funny and scary and exciting and more, across all of humanity. A job that he still does to this very day. The end.
Thanks for listening.